now, guys? How y'all doing? Sorry for the lack of videos, but well, I was in the middle of process of moving now, and yeah, they needed to rearrange some things, but here I am back again, and we're about to review, well, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the Sega Saturn. Now, I gotta tell you guys, this game was one of those hard to get, didn't know existed kind of situations when I was a kid. You see, I found out about this game in a really peculiar way. Back in the day, Street Fighter was all the hype. And the newest game that was about to be released on the Genesis and Super Nintendo was Super Street Fighter 2. And when I bought it, I played it, and I totally loved this thing. I would spend hours and hours trying to perfect, trying to master everyone's techniques, everyone's combos. And it was just a joy. It was a blast to play. A couple of months down the line, I don't know, maybe 2 months down the line, my bro gets me the official player's guide from GamePro, and this thing had everything. It had techniques, it had combos you could perform, strategies, it could show you all the moves, what each button did. You know, whenever you selected a character, it could tell you, hey, if you push roundhouse, you're gonna get this color. If you push jab, you get the original color. It had it all. So I was pleasantly pleased at having this thing, and immediately I tried to pull out the same combos that were in the strategy guide. To little to no success. I was only barely in fourth grade. But in the second half of the strategy guide was another strategy guide. It was like the strategy guide for Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. I was like, oh my god, this is another Street Fighter that's bound to come out. I didn't go to the arcades too much back in the day. You see, I was still a kid. The arcade was like far, far away. The only time I would ever go to an arcade was like whenever I would go to the mall with my folks. And and even then, they weren't gonna let a fourth grader wander around in an arcade where a bunch of like high schoolers were hanging out. So it was kind of a rare treat. But the fact that I knew that this game existed amped me up. Like, I can't wait for this version of Street Fighter to come out, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. I really wanted it. Time passed, and the only version that was available at the home, I thought, was like the 3DO port. As we all know, the 3DO was expensive, man. We're talking about like $600-$700 at the time. It was expensive, and I wasn't about to like beg my parents to buy me a new system just to play one game. Although I thought about it, but I wasn't about to do that. So I'll wait. I was thinking, maybe it'll come out on the 32X. For a while, I thought the 32X was going to get a version of this game. It didn't come out. It did come out on the Saturn and on the PlayStation, but I was unaware that it came out. I really thought that the Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo literally skipped the 32-bit generation. And for the longest, I thought, well, it was a home port, whatever. A home port on the 3DO, and that was it, whatever. A little bummed out. I wouldn't play this game until I believe a couple of years later at the arcades. I think sometime in '98, and it was everything I could have dreamed of. Pulling off the juggles was easy. The combos that were tight, the supers were there, and I was like, damn, I really want to go ahead and get into the nitty gritty on this game, but I can't do it because when I was playing it, I was following along my brother, and and we did spend too much time there because I wasted all my quarters on that thing. But it gave me a little taste of what I really wanted out of Street Fighter 2. Granted, this was 98, so what, like 4 years after it came out. So granted, Alpha was already out at this point, and that's a cool game and stuff. But to me, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo was kind of like the Street Fighter that got away, right? And I wouldn't get a home port of it until Capcom Classics Collection Volume 2 on the PS2. And when I played this thing, it was not fun. It was not fun. For one, the controls were kind of laggy. Whenever I would push a button or something, it wouldn't register, or it would come out a little late. It just didn't feel right. Another thing is that it slowed down sometimes. I don't know why, but it slowed down, and I'm like, I'm crazy. Like, what's going on? Later, I find out that it was emulating the arcade ROM, and I should have suspected something. I should have suspected something was wrong with this version of the game, because it looked like someone smeared Vaseline on it. I don't know. I thought that they did it on purpose, just so the pixels won't look too blocky. But alas, that's what the issue was. It was an emulated version on the PS2. So I was like, damn it. Well, I guess it is what it is. I didn't have any fun. It was really difficult. I remember spending like a good hour or two just trying to get through the entire game. I was like, I don't remember Street Fighter being this hard. And I go back, play Street Fighter on Genesis and stuff, and it was like, no, Street Fighter shouldn't be this hard, but for some reason it was. So I was like, whatever. I decided to like look up what version of Super Street Fighter 2 is available on consoles. Like, what is the best? The general consensus is get the arcade. If you can afford it, get the arcade. Use a super gun or something and connect it to your TV and play Street Fighter 2 Turbo that way. And I was like, yeah, I'm not about to go ahead and buy an arcade board just to play one game. At the time, I think the arcade board was going around for like $300-$400. So I was like, yeah, forget about that. Next came the Dreamcast version. Now, I was aware of the Dreamcast version, but that thing cost an arm and a leg. It was just slightly less expensive than buying the CPS2 board. And I was like, do I really want to spend that much money on one game? I was close to it, but I was like, nah. I at the time, I was like, nah, I can't do that right now. It was just too expensive. However, unbeknownst to me, there was a version on the PS1 and on the Sega Saturn. And I was like, wait, what? I was looking up forums. As I was doing my research, I was looking up forums, and there was part of a Street Fighter collection, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo and Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold in a single package for both the Sega Saturn and PlayStation. And when I realized this, when I found this out, I was ready to bash my head into the monitor. I was like, oh my god, if I knew that these two versions of this game existed, I would have bought it years ago. I could have bought it as soon as 1997. And I was like, I missed out. I can't believe I missed out. I really wanted to hit my head up against the monitor, but I was like, you know what? Forget about it. I'm gonna look. I'm gonna study, see what people say about these two versions. Which port is better? And the natural consensus was like, you know what? Get the Sega Saturn version. For some reason, people believe that the Sega Saturn version is a superior version to the PlayStation. My guessing this has to do with something I'm not aware of. If you guys know the nitty-gritty about that stuff, please leave it down in the comments. I would like to know what's the difference between the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn version of ST. Anyway, let's get on to the review. Now when it comes to fighting games, I'm no pro. I lose like something like 70% of my matches up in Fightcade and in Street Fighter V. So yeah, I'm not all that great. But I do have fun. And the CPU here is much more fair, and you can adjust the difficulty settings in the option menu if you like to have a harder challenge. But yeah, the CPU here is much more fair and a much more fun experience as opposed to how it was in Capcom Classics Collection Volume 2 and in ST or SF Anniversary, Street Fighter Anniversary. So yeah, you'll have a lot more fun here. Everything is retained from the arcade as well. All the juggles, all the old characters, all the new special moves, all the super moves, and even Akuma. Everything that was available in arcade is also available here. In terms of gameplay, there are like a couple of like nuances that you might be able to find, such as Guile retaining his chain combo from Hyper Fighting and Champion Edition. I can never pull them off, but if you're a pro and you find this in here, well, I guess that might bug you a little bit, but I can never pull off chain combos like that, so to me it's not really a big issue. What I do find a big issue is the lack of content. Now, if you look at the menu over here on the Sega Genesis version of Super, yeah, you have all these game modes. On the Sega Saturn version of ST, you only get the arcade and versus mode. And of course the standard option mode, but arcade and versus mode. Which really sucks, because if you look at Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold, that's available here on the same compilation, you get all these different options. I don't know why they couldn't do the same for ST, but yeah, Capcom really dropped the ball here in terms of content. I would have loved a training mode here to practice my combos and get familiar with the mechanics of this game, but they didn't do that. They didn't give us a time attack mode or survival mode, which would have made this purchase a little bit more bearable. But what's here is here, and well, what's done is done.
You lose. Round 3, fight. You win!
Graphics are, well, almost arcade perfect. Don't get me wrong, there were no cuts to any of the assets. Every pixel is here, as well as every frame of animation. The backgrounds look just as good and as detailed as they did back on the CPS2, so you're probably wondering, what's the problem? Well, it's the resolution. The Saturn is running this game at 320 by 224, where ST and arcade runs it at 384 by 224. Because of this discrepancy, all the action looks slightly zoomed in, making the characters look larger by comparison. Not only that, everything around the border of the screen has been cropped. This is especially apparent on the progress screen, whereas you continue to play and all the portraits of the defeated fighters look chopped up down on the bottom. I don't really see this as a big issue since it doesn't mess with the gameplay, though arcade purists might have a problem with this. Controls are spot on. The Saturn control pad lends itself perfectly to the button layout of Street Fighter, so everything here is pretty responsive. Personally, I use an arcade stick for most of this video, and pulling off combos was just as easy as it was back on arcades. Though results may vary depending how skilled you are. So anyone who's used to ST in arcades won't find any issues here.
Round 2, fight! You win!
Music and sound, well, they are arcade perfect. This port of ST utilizes Red Book audio for the music, so they can't mess it up. It's Red Book audio. You can literally take the CD-ROM, pop it into the CD player, and bam, instantly you have the ST soundtrack right in your fingertips. Sound effects and voice samples are perfect as well, although that is to be expected. This game originally came out in 94 and this port came out in 97. So with the upgrade of 32-bit technology, I don't see how they could have messed this up. And I'm glad it came out perfectly as it did. It totally encompasses the whole arcade perfect feel that everyone was striving for back in the day. Now what I do find a little bit lacking is the presentation. Compared to the arcade, well, a lot of stuff was included. The classic intro with Ryu posing, charging up his Hadouken, and Chun-Li and Cammy on the bridge, and Akuma flashing in and out during every lightning strike. That's in there. But what's missing, or rather should I say it's been altered, is the ending. You see, when you have a perfect run of the game, all this new character art scrolls through the screen, like one after another. You'll see new pictures or new drawings of various characters and their new ending pictures, followed by every character posing on screen. But no, that has been changed to the character you selected and another random character duking it out through the various stages that are in the game. Now, which that ain't bad, but me personally, I would rather see the new character art. Now, my guess is they had to change it because of the Saturn's memory limitations, but I really don't think that was it. Another thing they could have done is that they could have put art during the loading screen. Now, they done this for Alpha 3 on the PlayStation 1, and I know this game came out before that one, but man, I would have loved it if they could have done something. Granted, the loading screen isn't that long, I think maybe like 5-6 seconds, but something in the middle of all that would have been nice. So besides all that, there is one thing that regarding this game, there's one gripe I have, and that will be Akuma's entrance. Now, it's a minor thing, I know, but for some reason, it just kind of irks me. You see, this is a port, right? They could have fixed issues from like the translation process and all that stuff, but they didn't do that. They kind of kept everything the same. And for those of you who don't know, I'm getting off topic here, but for those of you who don't know, in the Japanese version of ST, Super X, or SX, however you want to call it, when Akuma makes his entrance, his grand entrance, he's a secret boss character from back in the day. He teleports in, beats up Bison, and he's holding Bison there by the head. Then the screen narrows in where only Akuma and your character are seen. Nothing else, just Akuma and your character. And then Akuma says a couple of words. After that, he let go of Bison's head, and the match begins between you and Akuma. Now that right there was awesome. It's totally badass. However, in the US version of the game, and this is not only this part, but also in arcade. But in the US version of this game, he just teleports in, beats up Bison, and then the match starts right away. Like, I know it's only a couple of seconds missing, but that little sentence he said just like screams power. Like, it's a much better introduction to what we got over here. It wouldn't be until we got Ultra Street Fighter 2 on the Switch that we were able to finally see that entrance and know what he's saying. Now, I know a lot of people might find this as me blowing this out of the water, but when I first laid eyes on Akuma, I thought he was like the most badass thing. And if he would have said something in the beginning, yeah, it would have just made it much more better. Like, his appearance, his grand entrance would have been just that much better. In my opinion, that would have been that much better.
You win. Perfect. Round 2, fight! Shoryuken! Shoryuken! Yeah! Shoryuken! 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 You win.
And there you have it, guys. Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the Sega Saturn, part of the Street Fighter collection, which also includes Super Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold. So they're getting pretty good collection here. But do I recommend playing ST on the Saturn? Well, let me first give it a grade. I gotta give it a B. It's an excellent game. It's like almost arcade perfect. The only thing that holds it back would be the screen and the presentation. They're a little bit lacking in those areas, but on it all, everything else is here. The gameplay's here. Juggles, old characters. If you want to experience ST in a different way, you have that option. Akuma's here. Oh, selecting Akuma is actually easy. You hold down L while pushing R, and then there you go, you have Akuma. So it's easier than how it was done in arcades. But would I recommend this game? It's tough. I want to say yes, because it was really fun to play. The CPU is easier, and I had a lot more fun playing this. But it's really, really lacking in content. This is like a bare bones kind of port. You see, this is a console game. No matter how you slice it, it's a console game. And if you only have an arcade and a versus mode, that's not really going to cut it. I would have appreciated if there was some sort of training mode or some sort of like combo trials kind of thing. Like what was present in later iterations of Street Fighter, but no, they didn't do that. They lagged it in the porting process, and it kind of hurts it. If you want a better, more fleshed out experience, I would recommend playing Street Fighter Anniversary Collection on the PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. But the computer is really cheap on those consoles. I found out that when they ported over ST over here from Japan, they messed up on the programming, and yeah, that's why the computer's hard on ST in arcades. At least they fixed that when it came to this, but not to the arcades. And well, because of that, because Street Fighter Anniversary is using emulation, that problem persists. But regardless, those versions have a lot more to offer than what's here. But if you want to flesh out your Saturn collection, this ain't a bad collection to have. It has Alpha 2 Gold and original Super Street Fighter 2, so it's not a bad purchase. I do have to say that prices on this are going up. It is coming close to $200. So just be aware if you're planning to get this. Anyway, this was Knockout 21. Please comment, rate, and subscribe. And like always, have a good one. Take care, you guys.